Hello again, and we continue. Knowing. We must be willing to let go of the life we planned so as to have the life that is waiting for us. E.M. Foster. Knowing. My little book. Unlike many other psychics, intuitives, or mediums out there, I can't say I always saw spirits ever since I was a child, or I have always known I was a psychic, then proceed to tell story after story of amazing events. I just can't say that. Like all others, however, I did know I was different. But seriously, don't all kids feel different? Or feel that way at some point? In my case, I felt different because I felt so much wiser and older than the other kids. Not necessarily smarter, but wiser and older. I just knew things. Things a kid of 4 to 8 years old should not know so much about. It was not like I was predicting the future or anything exciting like that, but I often knew and understood quite a bit about life and the world around me. Side note, I do not use the term psychic because that term has been bastardized over the years. We are all intuitive, I believe that. Not technically, psychic means seeing the future, being more precognizant. But it's a dirty word now. I don't use it. So anyway, we go. As I got older and looked back on it, I just assumed it was because I was around adults more often. When I really look back at the details with more understanding, I realized that sometimes I knew things, the answers to questions that the adults I was around did not even know. Most of the time it was that I would finish an adult's sentences, sometimes out loud, and sometimes just in my head. Or if they could not think of a song title or singer, I would hear a song in my head or picture the album cover and read it out loud to them. Yes, I remember albums. You youngsters. Silly kids. Even songs and artists I had not yet heard or heard of. My mother would always say something like, "Oh, you must have overheard someone talking about whatever I seemed to know," or that I had seen or heard the information on television. Though in those days, we did not watch nearly as much television as we do now. These things I remember. I don't watch much TV anymore. I also distinctly remember having 2 invisible friends, although I only remember one being made up. I guess this could be considered a sort of pre-psychic time. Again, looking back with some more spiritual knowledge, I now remember the other real one. Again, throwing out this term psychic, this book I wrote as of this recording, I think it was published 11 years ago. 11 years. It's been a while. I was supposed to have a few more. Anyway, I also I was asked to elaborate on my friends so as not to leave you in suspense. The one I knew was made up was Sally. I still love that name. She was created from my love of a character on the Paul Lynde show back in the early 70s. Sally was the character Paul's daughter. Her long, wavy, gorgeous hair fascinated me, so I pretended to befriend her for hair advice. I was getting ready to say it, and here it is. I also love the Jan Brady character on the Brady Bunch for the same reason. Sorry, Marcia. The other friend had phenomenal hair as well, but hers was deep black and straight. It is odd that I would forget the details of the real one for so many years for many reasons. 1, she was not made up. 2, after I'd moved from California where she stayed, I named my favorite dolls and Barbies after her, even the ones with blonde hair. Sometimes I would paint their hair with mascara. Finally, her hair led me to watching the Sonny and Cher show because Cher's hair was similar. Plus, my personal favorite, there was my childhood routine There's my childhood routine of pulling a black turtleneck over my head and pretending it was luxurious, long black hair. I would pull it on and pull it back so that the turtleneck part was on my head. This was a fun contrast, considering I went from being a towhead, white blonde, to short average brown hair during these younger years. So, yeah, if you know the term towhead, I had white hair. A couple of years ago, I read a book that mentioned someone and their imaginary friends. Imaginary friends that were not so imaginary. And that made me think of mine again. I instantly remembered I had two, and recalled Sally, and then went blank. I could not remember the second one at all at that time. I just figured she was made up too, and that I just lost the memory. Then I thought to myself, what if she was not pretend after all? I figured one day I would have time to do a hypnotherapy regression or something that would help me remember. Then one day I was doing a two and a half hour massage on a client. As I worked and my client slept, I began to zone out. I was bored. And let my mind wander to make the time pass more quickly. In my office, I have these two amazing paintings of a woman angel. The angel has a dark complexion with long flowing black hair, very American Indian looking. In fact, the artist specializes in Native American people and scenes. I began staring at the woman in the painting and noticed details I'd never noticed before, a familiarity. Then the name popped into my head. I'm getting goosebumps. I had not thought of that name, in this way anyway, in a long, long time. How could I have forgotten her? Suddenly the memories began flooding in. The hair, the turtleneck, my dolls, my friend. I live in Arizona and have for many years now. I hear the name quite often, and I just never made the connection. Maria was my childhood friend. She was an Apache Indian child who had passed in the area many years before. I could go into greater detail, but that could be another book. Yeah. I do believe that she guided me to the Southwest again and to my current home. She was with me from when I was around two, until, as I mentioned, I moved to Kentucky when I was around 4 or 5. Before the friend epiphany, however, the only really strange different thing I experienced was that I had what I called my smell thing, which I now know is actually clairalience or clairolfaction. I can never say that out. Basically meaning clear smelling. One of the lesser mentioned psychic clairs. I would get this odd smell when I looked at old pictures. At first I thought it was because they were old black and white pictures and that everyone smelled it, although it did not happen with all old photos. But then it happened with color photos and copies of old pictures. It happened with pictures of people and of places. The photos of people were usually stronger in scent. When I started studying intuition, I would mention this to instructors and they would immediately ask if it was a death smell, then describe various vile combinations of stink. I would then have to explain that it was not a bad smell, though not very pleasant. It was a damp, musky, dusty smell. The visual that has always come to mind when I describe it is a damp, dusty attic with old trunks and furniture covered in dust and cobwebs. Not like a scary scene, just old, abandoned, and untouched. Some of the pictures with the smell, though not really scary, did make me feel uncomfortable or sad, but I did not know why. A few were overwhelming, and I could not look at them for long. I would have a feeling I could only describe as the nervous, nauseous feeling you get as a child when you know you are in trouble, a kind of fear feeling. I wish I could say I knew who or what was in the photos that had such an effect on me, but I don't. I didn't even know if the photos were of family, and that was the connection, but random pictures in books had the same effect. I wish I had some of those pictures now, knowing better and being able to maybe find the right questions to ask my helpers. I remember my grandfather had a book of old Western ghost towns. Man, I had a field day with that. I used to look at it all the time. It showed old towns in their heyday and what the towns looked like when the book was done. I got the smell really strong on many of the black and white before pictures, but I also got the smell a bit milder on the now color pictures. I got the smell even when there was only rubble and weeds in the picture. Yeah, I don't know what happened to that book after my grandfather passed, but I know a lot of it was, I'm pretty sure the name of the book had something to do with Old West ghost towns. And here I am in the Southwest. And I want to share this as well. So talking about the paintings that I was zoning out. Now, just so you know, peeps, I do pay attention to my clients. But I think this person, it was 2.5 hours, just legs. And he was sound asleep. So I'm zoning, I'm looking at these pictures, and then I start noticing. So I'm going to show you, these are from, does it have her name? Tracy Rabbit. Sure, I should know. So Tracy Rabbit does, and her father also does, he does more of the Southwest art, but Tracy Rabbit does a lot of Native American work. So this is one. I found these at a store that I'll discuss as we get closer. There's one. And of course my colors. And this is her as well. But this is her grown up. So when I knew her, she was maybe 6. Next chapter.